I'm Talia. That doesn't really matter because this is Other People's Adventures. So a few days ago, a friend comes up to me and says this. Talia, do you want to do a book blog with me? Yeah, that'd be awesome, because then I won't just be ranting to you guys, but to an entire internet of people. And then an entire list of things was given to me that I need to do, including start a Twitter, get people to follow me, pick out books that I wanted to review, and a whole myriad of other things that I did not think was involved with book reviewing. But as you can see from this gigantic bookshelf behind me, I am a bit of a voracious reader, and voracious is a kind term. I read in class and in places that really shouldn't be read in. So I figured that, yes, I read in trees. Trees are a good place to read. Maggie Steve Otter says the books are more real when you read them outside. So I decided that this would be a really good idea because I would actually get to put this amazing amount of reading that I do and the useless information stuffed in my head about opinions about characters and a whole lot of other list of things that don't really matter to normal humans, and put it in a place where the community actually cares. So this will be the setting, which is actually my bedroom, and I will have two hands with me. The hand of Marie, who's snarky and annoying, and I plan on cutting her fingers off at some point, and the hand of Rin. Rin's hand is not here today because Rin is babysitting her brother, and the hand is getting a manicure. What?
No.
See what I mean? The genre we'll mostly be focusing on is young adult, or YA. Mostly fantasy, urban fantasy actually. And a little bit of contemporary. Not a ton, but you know, you can't just not review something by John Green. Without further ado, you can talk to us or ask questions at our email other.peoples.adventures@gmail.com or tweet us at the Twitter @OPA Adventures. And you can be our friends, which would be awesome because we're sad, lonely introverts. Bye! Hi guys! Alright, today we'll be reviewing Stung by Bethany Wiggins. Okay, this book is weird. I'm just going to read you the inside jacket cover because there's no other real way to explain what's going on because personally I still don't really get it. There was no cure for being stung. Fiona doesn't remember going to sleep, but when she awakens, her world no longer exists. Her house is abandoned and broken, her neighborhood is barren and dead, and there is a tattoo on her right hand. A tattoo Fiona doesn't remember getting, but somehow knows she must conceal at any cost. Because humanity has been divided. Those bearing the tattoo have turned mindless, violent beasts that roam the streets and sewers, preying upon the unbranded, while a secret few without tattoos live protected inside a fortress-like wall, their lives devoted to rebuilding society and killing all who bear the mark. And Fiona has awoken branded, on the wrong side of the wall, and normal. This is sort of a retelling of Sleeping Beauty. What happened was, the trigger for the apocalypse, really, was getting the bees. All honeybees were going basically extinct. So the government worked on creating artificial bees that would reproduce and fix all the problems that losing bees would create. The problem was, the bees carried this horrible toxin. And if you got stung by one, you started to go insane and then die. Which wasn't, well, it was pretty bad. So what they started to do is inoculating children. The most any child got as far as vaccines was 10 months of vaccine rounds. And the number of months that you were vaccinated is what level you are. Fiona's a level 10. What level you are depends. The vaccine ended up giving children these insane, horrible hallucinations, going crazy. A lot of them killed and ate their families. And any kid that was given 10 rounds of inoculation was basically forfeit life. Fiona and her twin brother were both level 10s. When Fiona wakes up, she doesn't know any of this. She doesn't know where she is or what's happening. And that's one of the major issues, because Fiona is totally lost, so are we. She explains the entire experience in sort of like this hallucinating, half there, half awake state that makes the reader kind of confused as you're going through trying to understand what's going on. because one minute she's being let into the wall, and the next minute she's in the sewers, and I still don't quite understand how that happened. The protagonist in the story, his name is Drayden Bowen. They were next door neighbors when they were kids. They weren't exactly friends, but they knew each other and teased each other enough that Bowen had a nickname for her, Photard. When they're talking, Drayden Bowen tells Fiona never to call him Drayden, but then never elaborates on why he does this, and later on in the book when she calls him in again, he doesn't seem like he really cares that much. He has a couple of cheesy lines in the book that kind of speed along their relationship development, and it's weird because it's like, I can't bear seeing you dressed like that because I'm a man, and seeing you like that I won't ever be able to keep my hands off of you. And at the very end of the book, when everyone's safe and saved, and they suddenly revert to these very teenage personalities. Like, before they were hell-bent on surviving and they were willing to kill random people to keep themselves alive, but then as soon as everyone's safe, they are literally acting like the 17-year-olds they are. Which brings me to the next point. Fiona's 17. She fell asleep when she was 13. But she never has any sort of emotional breakdown or mourns the loss of her future. She just kind of accepts, okay, I lost 4 years of my life. There's a big maturity gap between being 13 and 17. You don't just understand that and then go and fall in love with another 17-year-old guy. It doesn't happen. It would be just no. But those are basically the gist of things that are wrong with the book. They're pretty big, but they're not huge. You can overlook them. Pros. Their relationship, despite Bowen's really cheesy lines, it does develop semi-naturally. They are trying to survive, and they start out sort of hating each other because he is afraid that she's going to turn into a monster, and she's afraid that he's going to kill her if she turns into a monster. But eventually they get over that. Fiona never really allows herself to be babied. She always is wanting to protect herself and refuses to accept that somebody else can take care of her. Which is kind of furthered by the fact that when she was 11, she learned how to fire a gun and is a better shooter than Bowen ever will be. The ending is happy. It ends with hope. It ends with them together and then her finding parts of her family that are still alive and everyone's good, and there is a ring of hope to the end of it, as opposed to, like, I don't know if you guys know The Darkest Minds, but that book had me in tears. The ending is politics of the apocalypse have separated them and everyone is sad and depressed and the world is sucking. No. They have brought about the future that the people after this apocalypse have been waiting for. The chance to cure these horrible beasts and bring them back as the family they once knew. The bad guys brought to justice, and the history of the apocalypse, which is very interesting, isn't overdone. They don't spend like 10 pages explaining how the genetic material of the bees affects how it affects our immune system, which is why we go insane. It's just government created bees stung people, kids got inoculated so that the bees wouldn't affect them, they went insane, ate and killed their families, and then anyone who wasn't cured of the bee sting virus lived long, satisfying lives. It gives you the information you need, which is really good storytelling. It's like with Back to the Future when they do the flux capacitor. We know that the flux capacitor is what makes time travel possible, but we don't know how. And that's okay, because we don't really care. The book focuses on the now of what's happening. It focuses on what happened after the apocalypse. It's what's important. You only needed the bare bones of how we arrived at the point we are, and now we're going to focus on how we're going to rectify where we are. It's really good. The story, because of all the issues I give it, I'm only giving it 2.5 hats, but it's still really good, and I recommend anybody read it. Bye! Hi guys! Alright, today we'll be reviewing The Nightmare Fair by Mindee Arnett. This book takes place at a school called Arkwell Academy, and it is a place for magical beings to go to school. The main character, Dusty Everhart, is the only nightmare on campus. Nightmares are people who touch you while you're sleeping and feed off of your dreams. Dusty has a really bad, dysfunctional relationship with her mother. Her mother was one of the first magic kind to marry a human, and then went right back and divorced him a few years later, leaving Dusty completely alone and motherless. But as soon as Dusty comes in her powers as a nightmare, her mother starts paying attention. One day, when Dusty's out feeding, the guy that she's feeding off of wakes up. And not only does she wake up, but in his nightmare, he was dreaming of a girl dying at her school. And when she gets back to school, it has actually happened. Everyone thinks that Dusty's involved, but it turns out that Dusty's not only a nightmare, but a dream seer, able to see the future through another person's dreams. Throughout the course of the book, Dusty tries to figure out who is killing off these students and why exactly she can see it, but nobody else can predict it, including all the oracles on campus. One of the few things that I don't like about the book is that they don't really elaborate on how horrible Dusty's mother leaving is. Her mother takes off and doesn't speak to her for a solid 3 years and only leaves her with her dad. Second point, her dad's her primary caretaker but never actually shows up, which is horrible because he's the one that's actually concerned with her well-being while her mother is just trying to say, okay, these are all the horrible, dangerous things you need to do to help figure out what happens to all these kids. Dusty develops a relationship with a senior named Paul. Paul is a computer nerd and one of the few kids on campus that does not have magical powers, and this happens a lot when two different species of magic kind have children. Dusty never sets any boundaries with Paul, and the only reason at one point that they don't have sex is because it's uncomfortable. And she says that she wishes she'd set boundaries, but she doesn't, which I don't get why she can't just have the conversation, because he seems like a pretty chill guy. And at the end of the book, a lot of things have happened, and some complicated situations have developed between the characters, and they never actually talk about it before the end. Pick it up, Pam. I demand you pick it up. Those are the only things that are really wrong with the book. The rest of it was pretty great. First and foremost, the most amazing thing about any book is that the heroine is sarcastic and strong. Dusty is so hilarious at every single thing she says. It's a very witty imagination of some iconic magical characters. Like, for example, fairies aren't able to eat sugar because they're allergic, so a lot of the staff have an underground sugar cartel, like we would have drug cartels at our schools. And it's really funny when Dusty finds out that the janitor is the one running the entire thing. Second, the book is centered around King Arthur. The entire mystery of why these kids are being killed off is centered around how King Arthur's legend derives from actual magic kind stories of real accounts and situations. And you find out that Dusty is actually a descendant of a major character in King Arthur, but I won't tell you which. Dusty's a nightmare, which means she's supposed to be naturally terrifying and scary and sexual, but no, she's awkward and she is normal and she is just a believable, wonderful character. And I love reading her, and I can't wait for the next book to come out. The relationship between Eli, who is the guy that Dusty can see the future through when he's dreaming, they don't start out immediately falling in love with each other and he thinks that she's amazing and the sun and the moon and that he's so hot and wonderful. No, they end up in relationships with other people. And not only that, but they are good friends, and it helps a lot because it's more natural that way when the relationship, which I'm assuming is going to happen, will develop in later books. And then there's Eli's best friend, Lance. You may want to cover your ears for this. Lance is an asshole. There is no other proper way to describe the way this guy acts. He is a jerk, and he's constantly playing tricks on Dusty. He even keeps account about how many points he's at versus hers. Right now it's Lance 4, Dusty 3. But I'm guaranteeing she's going to make some sort of pull ahead in the next book. She has to. And finally, the thing I want to leave you guys with is that the book is believable. It is wonderful, and the characters are real. And even Dusty's best friend, Celine, who's a siren. And sirens are often portrayed as very sexual creatures as well. But no, Celine dresses up like a boy and says that she wishes sirens weren't objectified as sex objects on several different occasions. The characters are wonderful. They're real, and they have their own set of issues, and there's the politics of how the world works, and everything's just really awesome and wonderful, and anyway, you guys need to read it. It's wonderful. I give it 4.5 hats. The Nightmare Fair by Mindee Arnett. Go get it in your local bookstore. Bye!